The canal was a black, churning wound cutting through the underbelly of the city. Rain slashed down in sheets, turning the world into a blur of gray and charcoal. Under the concrete arch of the 4th Street Bridge, the roar of the water was deafening, a hungry sound that swallowed everything it touched. Jax was 19, but hunger and the hard pavement had carved hollows into his cheeks that made him look older, yet somehow more fragile. He was invisible. He lived in the shadows, sharing a damp cardboard mattress with a 3-legged pit bull named Buster. He avoided trouble at all costs. But when he saw the flash of pink, a small girl's jacket, tumble from the slippery embankment into the raging current, the instinct for self-preservation vanished. Jax didn't think. He didn't check the freezing temperature of the water. He dove. The cold hit him like a sledgehammer, punching the air from his lungs. The current grabbed him, twisting him violently, but his fingers found the fabric of the girl's jacket. He kicked, muscles screaming, fighting the entire weight of the storm-swollen river. He dragged her through the mud, his fingernails tearing against the sludge until he finally heaved her onto the grassy bank. She was coughing, spitting up water, alive. Jax collapsed on the grass, his chest heaving, the adrenaline beginning to fade into a bone-deep chill. Then, the world exploded with sound. The rumble of 50 V-twin engines tore through the storm. Headlights sliced through the rain, blinding him. A convoy of heavy motorcycles skidded to a halt on the maintenance road above. A giant of a man leaped off the lead bike. He wore a leather vest with the Death Head logo on the back, the mark of the Hells Angels. He looked like a titan carved from granite and rage. He saw the girl on the ground. He saw Jax looming over her. The biker roared, a sound that rivaled the thunder. "Who did this? What did you do?" Jax froze. His life on the streets had taught him one lesson. When a powerful man screams, pain follows. He didn't see a father panicked for his child. He saw a predator about to kill him for being near the accident. Jax scrambled backward, slipping in the mud. "Hey, you!" the biker screamed, lunging forward. Terror seized Jax's heart. He didn't wait to explain. He turned and sprinted into the darkness, diving into the gaping mouth of a storm drain just as the heavy boots of the Hells Angels hit the mud behind him. Jax ran until his lungs burned. He hid in the sewers, shivering, clutching his dog. He thought they were hunting him to silence a witness. He didn't know the girl was the daughter of Vance Viper Stone, the president of the Hells Angels. He didn't know that the 500 bikers currently tearing the city apart weren't looking for a victim. They were looking for a hero. But when they finally found him, Jax was going to learn that running from the Hells Angels is impossible. Before the plunge, Jax had been a ghost. That was the safest thing to be in a city that chewed people up and spat them out. He had no parents, no address, and no money. His entire world was the contents of a waterproof backpack and the warm, steady weight of Buster leaning against his leg. They sat under the bridge, watching the storm roll in. Buster whined, licking the stump where his back left leg used to be. "I know, buddy," Jax whispered, rubbing the dog's velvet ears. "It's gonna get cold tonight. We'll find a dry spot." Jax wasn't bitter. Bitterness took energy, and he needed every calorie just to stay warm. He was observant. He watched the cars pass on the bridge above, wondering what it felt like to have a heater, a destination, a home. He had been scavenging near the overflow output when he saw them. A man in expensive leather riding gear and a little girl, maybe 8 years old, walking along the pedestrian path. The girl was chasing a metallic red balloon that was bobbing erratically in the wind. "Lily, stay back," the man had shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the wind. The balloon dipped over the concrete lip of the canal. Lily lunged for it. Her sneaker hit a patch of wet moss, and she vanished. No scream, just a splash that was barely audible over the rain. The man, her father, was too far away. He was running, but he was 50 yards out. Jax was 10 yards away. The memory of the water was still vivid in his mind as he crouched in the sewer tunnel an hour later. The taste of oil and decay. The weight of the girl. the way she had gripped his collar, terrified. He shivered violently, his wet clothes clinging to his skin like ice. Buster huddled into his chest, trying to share warmth. "We messed up, Buster," Jax chattered, his teeth clicking together. "That was a Hell's Angel. Did you see his patch? The bottom rocker said New York." Jax knew the stories. Everyone on the street knew the stories. If you crossed the Angels, you didn't go to jail. You went missing. "He thinks I pushed her," Jax thought, panic tightening his chest. "Or he thinks I tried to hurt her. Why else would he scream like that?" He had to keep moving. The storm drain wouldn't be safe. They had flashlights. They had numbers. Jax stood up, his knees shaking, and limped deeper into the labyrinth of the city's underground. Above ground, the rain continued to hammer the pavement. Vance Viperstone fell to his knees in the mud, clutching his daughter to his chest. Lily was soaked, trembling and coughing, but she was breathing. She was alive. "Daddy," she wept, burying her face in his wet leather cut. "I slipped. I'm sorry." Vance rocked her, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He had seen her fall. He had seen the black water swallow his entire world. He thought he had lost her. "It's okay, baby. It's okay. I've got you," Vance choked out. He looked up, his eyes wild, scanning the reeds in the dark tunnel entrance where the boy had vanished. His sergeant-at-arms, a burly man named Tank, slid down the embankment. "Boss, is she okay?" "She's safe," Vance said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "Where is he?" "Who?" "The kid. The boy in the hoodie. He dove in. He pulled her out." Vance stood up, lifting Lily effortlessly into his arms. "I yelled at him. I was panicked. I think I scared him off." Lily sniffled, looking at the dark storm drain. "He had a dog, Daddy. A dog with 3 legs. He saved me." Vance looked at the black hole of the sewer entrance. The water was rising. If that kid stayed down there, he could drown. If he stayed on the streets in this storm, wet and freezing, hypothermia would take him before morning. Vance Viperstone was a man who paid his debts, and this was a debt of blood. He tapped the radio clipped to his vest. The channel crackled open, connecting him to every patched member in the tri-state area. "This is Viper," he said, his voice booming with authority. "Code red. I repeat, code red." Silence on the line. A code red usually meant war. It meant the club was under attack. "My daughter is safe," Vance continued, "because of a street kid, male, late teens, skinny, wearing a gray hoodie and traveling with a 3-legged pit bull. He ran because he was scared. He thinks we're hostile." Vance climbed onto the asphalt, the lights of 50 Harleys illuminating the rain. "I want every brother, every prospect, and every associate on the street. Turn this city upside down. Check the alleys, the shelters, the squats. Find the boy. Do not hurt him. Do not scare him. If you find him, you treat him like he wears a patch. You bring him to me. Ride." 500 engines revved in unison, a sound that shook the very foundations of the city. The hunt was on. For 48 hours, the city of New York belonged to the Hells Angels. To the average citizen, it was terrifying. Groups of bikers rumbled down every avenue, idling slowly past alleyways, shining flashlights into dumpsters. They stopped homeless men, showing them sketches, asking questions with urgent intensity. To Jax, it was a nightmare. He was hiding in the industrial district, miles away from the canal, huddled behind a stack of rotting pallets in an alley. He watched through a crack in the wood as 2 bikers cornered a homeless man named Old Sal. Jax couldn't hear the words. He only saw the large biker grab Sal's jacket to steady him, pointing a finger in his face. They're interrogating him, Jax thought, his stomach twisting. They're beating the location out of people. He didn't know the biker was actually slipping Old Sal a $50 bill and promising a hot meal for information. Jax's trauma filtered everything through the lens of fear. He had been beaten by foster parents, kicked by security guards, and spat on by passersby. In his mind, no one looked for a street kid unless they wanted to hurt him. "We have to move, Buster," Jax whispered. Buster whimpered. The dog was limping badly. The cold dampness was making his old joints ache, and they hadn't eaten in 2 days. Jax felt dizzy. His clothes had dried stiff and crusted with sewer filth, but his skin burned. He had a fever. "One more stop," Jax promised, clipping the frayed leash onto Buster's collar. "We need food. Then we hide until they stop looking." He reached into his pocket. His fingers brushed the cold metal of a silver locket. It was the only thing of value he owned, found in a gutter 3 years ago. He had saved it for an emergency. This was it. Jenkins' pawn loan was a cage of despair located on the edge of the slums. The windows were barred, and the air inside smelled of stale cigarettes and desperation. Old man Jenkins, a man in his 60s with grease-stained skin and eyes like a vulture, sat behind the bulletproof glass. He looked up as the bell chimed. Jack shuffled in, hood pulled low. Buster waited by the door, commanded to stay. "We're closing," Jenkins grunted, not looking up from his magazine. "Please," Jax's voice was raspy. "I have silver. Real silver." He slid the locket through the slot. Jenkins picked it up, weighing it. He squinted at Jax, then at the locket, then back at Jax. His eyes narrowed. "Wait a minute," Jenkins muttered. He reached under the counter and pulled out a flyer. It was a crude photocopy that had been circulating the neighborhood since morning. "Looking for boy 3-legged dog. Reward, $10,000. Contact Hell's Angels." Jenkins licked his lips. 10 grand. That was enough to fix his roof and pay off his gambling debts. But he knew the Angels. If he called them, they'd come here. Maybe they'd pay, maybe they wouldn't. But Jenkins was a man who liked to hold all the cards. He buzzed the door lock. Click. "Hey," Jenkins smiled, revealing yellow teeth. "This is a nice piece. Worth a lot. I gotta go to the back to get the cash. You want some water?" Jax nodded weak with relief. "Yes, please." Jenkins disappeared into the back room. Jax waited, leaning against the counter, his head spinning. Minutes passed. Suddenly, the back door flew open. Jenkins wasn't holding cash. He was holding a baseball bat. "Get in the back!" Jenkins shouted, rushing around the counter. "What?" Jack stumbled back. "I just want the money for the locket." "You're the kid the bikers want," Jenkins sneered, advancing. "I ain't gonna let you run off before they get here. I'm locking you in the cellar until I see the cash." "No," Jax panicked. "They'll kill me. Please." "Not my problem, rat." Jenkins swung the bat. It wasn't a lethal swing, just meant to hurt him, but it connected hard with Jax's ribs. Crack. Jax screamed, falling to his knees. The pain was blinding. "Get in the cellar!" Jenkins raised the bat again. Buster began to bark ferociously from the door, throwing himself against the glass. Jax, fueled by the sheer terror of being caged, scrambled backward. He kicked out, his boot catching Jenkins in the shin. As the old man howled and hopped, Jax grabbed a heavy brass lamp from a nearby shelf and threw it. It smashed into the display case, showering the floor with glass. In the confusion, Jax scrambled for the door. He fumbled with the latch, unlocked it, and burst out into the rainy street. "My locket," he gasped, realizing he had left it on the counter. But Jenkins was already coming out the door, bat raised. "Come back here, you little trash!" Jax didn't look back. He grabbed Buster's leash and ran, clutching his broken ribs, tears streaming down his face. He had lost his money. He was injured, and now he knew there was a price on his head. Day 3 brought a darkness that felt permanent. Jax could no longer run. His ribs felt like they were stabbing his lungs with every breath. The fever was a fire raging under his skin. He had found sanctuary in the skeletal remains of an abandoned textile factory on the outskirts of town. The roof was half collapsed, but the second floor had a dry corner shielded from the wind. Jax lay on a pile of old burlap sacks. Buster was curled tightly against his stomach, whining softly. "I'm sorry, boy," Jax whispered, his voice barely a rasp. He was delirious. "I tried. I really tried." He closed his eyes, accepting that this was the end. He would fall asleep here, and the cold would take him. It was better than the bikers, better than the bat. Then he felt the vibration. It started in the floorboards, a low, rhythmic trembling. Then came the sound, a distant roar that grew louder and louder until it filled the entire world. Jax's eyes flew open. He crawled to the edge of the broken wall and looked down. They were there. Hundreds of them. A sea of chrome and black leather surrounded the factory. The headlights were blinding, turning the night into day. They had found him. "No," Jax sobbed. He dragged himself back into the corner, pulling Buster behind him. "No, no, no." The sound of engines died, replaced by the heavy thud of boots on metal stairs. They were coming up. Jax spotted a rusted iron pipe on the floor. He grabbed it with trembling hands. He wouldn't go down easy. He would protect Buster. Footsteps echoed in the vast, empty factory floor. Heavy, deliberate. Beams of tactical flashlights cut through the gloom, sweeping over the rusted machinery. "Jax?" a voice called out. It wasn't a scream this time. It was deep and commanding. Jax pressed his back into the corner, holding the pipe like a sword. "Stay back!" he screamed, though it came out as a squeak. "I didn't do it! I swear I didn't push her!" The flashlight swung toward him. Jax squeezed his eyes shut, raising the pipe, waiting for the bullet or the knife. "Hold," the voice commanded. The footsteps stopped. Jax opened one eye. 10 feet away stood the giant, the president, Vance Viper Stone. He wasn't holding a weapon. He was holding his hands up, palms open. Behind him, a dozen other bikers stood like statues, their faces grim but not angry. "I know you didn't push her, son," Vance said softly. He took a slow step forward. "Don't come closer," Jax warned, swinging the pipe weakly. "You want to kill me. The old man said you put a bounty on me." Vance stopped. A look of pained realization crossed his scarred face. "We didn't put a bounty on you to hurt you, Jax. We put a bounty on you to find you." Vance lowered his hand slowly and reached into his vest. Jax flinched. But Vance didn't pull out a gun. He pulled out a photo. He tossed it onto the floor between them. It was a picture of Lily, sitting in a hospital bed, holding a teddy bear. She was smiling. "She's asking for you," Vance said, his voice cracking slightly. "She told us what you did. You jumped into the devil's throat to save my little girl. You're a hero, Jax." Jax lowered the pipe slightly. The adrenaline was fading, leaving him dizzy. "A hero?" "You're burning up," Vance observed, stepping closer. He saw the way Jax was favoring his side. "And you're hurt." I fell," Jax lied, his vision blurring. The room began to spin. "I just wanted to be invisible." "You ain't invisible anymore," Vance said. Jax's legs gave out. The pipe clattered to the floor. He slumped forward, darkness rushing up to meet him. He didn't hit the floor. Massive arms caught him. Leather that smelled of rain and tobacco enveloped him. "I got you," Vance whispered into his ear, holding him tight. It wasn't the grip of a captor. It was the grip of a father. "I got you, son. You're safe. Nobody touches you again." Jax felt a tear that wasn't his own land on his cheek. For the first time in his life, he let go. He blacked out in the arms of the Hell's Angels. Jax woke up to the smell of steak. He blinked, expecting the cold concrete of the factory. Instead, he was lying on a soft leather sofa. A fire was crackling in a large stone hearth. The room was warm, gloriously, impossibly warm. He tried to sit up, but a hand gently pushed him back. "Easy, kid. You got 3 cracked ribs and a hell of a fever. Jax looked up. A biker with a gray beard and a medic patch was checking his pulse. Where is Buster? Jax panicked, looking around. Relax, the medic pointed. By the fire, Buster was lying on a plush dog bed. He was chewing on a T-bone steak the size of a hubcap. His 3 legs were bandaged and clean. Jax let out a long breath. We're alive. More than alive, a voice boomed. Vance walked into the room. He looked different without the rain and the rage. He looked tired, but his eyes were kind. Welcome to the clubhouse, Vance said. The room was full of bikers. As Jax sat up, the conversation died. Every man in the room turned to look at him. Jax tensed, the old fear returning. Then, one by one, they started to clap. It started slow, then grew into a roar. These massive tattooed men were cheering. Some were raising beers. Some were nodding with respect. The door to the back room opened, and a blur of pink ran out. Jax! Lily screamed. She ignored her father's warning to be careful and threw her arms around Jax's neck. Jax stiffened, then slowly, awkwardly, patted her back. You saved me, Lily whispered. Thank you. Vance sat on the coffee table in front of Jax. We checked your background, Jax, or lack of one. You've been on the street since you were 14. That ends today. Vance placed a heavy envelope on the table. There's $50,000 in cash in there. Reward money. Jax stared at the envelope. It was more money than he had ever seen. But that's just the start, Vance continued. You need a place to stay? You stay here. You need a job? We own 3 garages. You want to learn to fix bikes? We'll teach you. Jax looked at Vance, then at the bikers, then at Buster happily chewing his steak. Why? Jax asked. I'm just a stray. You saved the president's daughter, the medic said, clapping Jax on the shoulder. And you ran into a storm to do it. You got the heart of a lion, kid. You ain't a stray. You're family. Later that night, the mood in the clubhouse shifted. Jax was eating a burger, feeling the warmth of the food spread through his limbs. He mentioned the locket. I lost it, Jax said quietly. At the pawn shop. Jenkins. He tried to lock me up. He swung a bat at me. The room went dead silent. The pool game stopped. The music was cut. Vance turned slowly to face Jax. His face had hardened back into stone. He hit you? With a bat? I think he wanted the reward money, Jax stammered, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. Vance stood up. He put on his helmet. He looked at his sergeant tank. Round them up. What are you going to do? Jax asked, worried. Don't kill him, please. Vance looked at Jax, his eyes cold as ice but burning with a protective fire. We aren't going to kill him, Jax. We're civilized men. But we are going to teach him a lesson about touching protected property. Vance looked at the club members. Ride. The pawn shop, 11 p.m. Jenkins was counting the money in his register, humming to himself. He figured the kid was probably dead in a ditch by now. Good riddance. The glass of his front window exploded inward. Jenkins screamed, diving behind the counter as a motorcycle, a literal Harley-Davidson, drove through his display window and into the lobby of the shop. The engine revved, filling the small space with exhaust and noise. Jenkins peeked over the counter. Vance Viper Stone was sitting on the bike, right in the middle of the shattered glass and broken guitars. Behind him, through the broken window, Jenkins could see a wall of bikers filling the street. Evening, Jenkins, Vance said calmly, though his voice vibrated with menace. Viper, Jenkins stuttered. I can explain. You hit a boy, Vance said, kicking the kickstand down and dismounting. He walked over to the counter. Jenkins cowered. A boy who is under the protection of the Hells Angels. I didn't know, Jenkins squealed. You knew enough to try and collect a bounty, Vance reached over the counter. He didn't hit Jenkins. He simply ripped the cash register off its mounting, wires sparking, and threw it through the remaining unbroken window. "Here's what is going to happen," Vance said, leaning in close. "You are going to give me the silver locket. Then, you are going to pack a bag. And then, you are going to leave this city." "This is my store," Jenkins cried. Tank stepped through the broken window, holding a sledgehammer. He smashed a display case of watches. Crash. "Not anymore," Tank smiled. "Now it's a parking lot." Vance held out his hand. Trembling, Jenkins reached into his pocket and produced the silver locket. Vance took it. He polished it on his leather vest. "If I see you in New York again, Jenkins, the police won't be able to identify you. Do we understand each other?" Jenkins nodded rapidly. "Good." Vance turned and walked out. "Tank, finish the renovation." As Vance walked back to his bike, the sounds of smashing glass and splintering wood filled the night air. It was the sound of justice. 1 month later. The sun was shining on the 4th Street Bridge. Jack sat on the back of Vance's custom Harley. The wind whipped at his face, but this time he wasn't cold. He was wearing a new leather jacket. It was stiff and heavy, crying out to be broken in. On the back of the vest, there wasn't a death head patch. Not yet. But there was a bottom rocker that said Prospect. They rumbled to a stop at a red light. A car pulled up next to them, a luxury sedan. The driver looked at the bikers with fear, locking his doors. Jax looked at the reflection in the car window. He didn't see a hollow-cheeked ghost anymore. He saw a young man with a fresh haircut, a full stomach, and a future. He looked down at the sidecar attached to Tank's bike next to them. Buster was sitting there, wearing oversized dog goggles, his tongue lolling out in the wind. Vance looked back over his shoulder. "You good, kid?" Jax touched the silver locket around his neck. He looked at the city that used to try to kill him. Now, with 50 brothers around him, the city looked different. It looked like a playground. "Yeah, President," Jax smiled, the first genuine smile he had worn in years. "I'm good." The light turned green, the engines roared, and Jax rode off, not running away from the demons, but riding alongside the angels.